Hey, shalom, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this Hebrew alphabet program called the Newbie Schnooby. So it's the Newbie Schnooby Hebrew Alphabet Beginner Reading Pre-Module. Notice I said pre-module because there's a pre-module to teach brand new students how to read the Hebrew alphabet. We go through the alphabet, we go through the vowels, we go through some very basic reading skills, and then on to the next pre-module. That would be 16 videos where I cover the 16 essential drills to jumpstart your Hebrew education. And from there, we begin with module 1. We get into actual teachings from the Torah, from the Hebrew Bible, verse by verse, and applying the different drills to actual verses from the Hebrew Bible. So I'm very happy that you've made it this far. Well, this far means the very beginning. I'm very happy you've made it to the very beginning. It should prove to be a very exciting journey. And so let's get into it. Okay, so this is the first panel introducing the alphabet. Alphabet, very ancient alphabet, and the letters that you're seeing have a background in the Phoenician languages and Assyrian languages. This is not the original script that was given in ancient times, such as at Mount Sinai. But at some point in time, that ancient script, which is much more archaic, was replaced with this block letter script that is now in all the Hebrew Bibles, all the Torah scrolls, and has been for millennia. And so let's just go through the alphabet one letter at a time here. And then I'm going to be devoting some time to each letter, letter by letter. And what you're going to find, there's tremendous depth in the Hebrew alphabet. So these letters are, in ancient times, they were pictures that meant something. These have numerical value. The letters in and of themselves have actual meaning, most of them. And there's ancient meanings that have been attributed to these letters that have come down through the ages. And so my goal is not to take that kind of time to give all the history and get into the mystical meanings, though that may be interesting. This course is all about expediting your Hebrew education. So I'd like it if it doesn't take 5 years, 10 years, 20 years for people to learn to read the Hebrew Bible. How about 2 or 3? Is that reasonable? I believe it's reasonable considering the program I've created and the 16 drills that form the basis of this. I call it the Yarash Hebrew Acceleration Program, also known as the Yarash Hebrew Conquest System. So those titles will be used interchangeably throughout this course. Let me get my annotation tools out here. Okay, so that is known as Aleph. It's one of the 2 silent letters, both Aleph and Ein. Ein would be the other silent letter. These letters had some faint sounds to them in ancient times. They no longer do. So they're known as silent letters, and they simply are going to take on the name of the vowel that appears beneath it. You'll see the arrows and the direction of the arrows. That'll be the biggest shocker for people that grew up speaking and reading English. Hebrew is not read from left to right. Hebrew is read backwards, or should we say frontwards, and English is read backwards. So it's from right to left. And so we're always going to begin on the right side of the screen, and we're going to go to the left. If you pick up any Hebrew book, what you're going to find is it appears to be backwards. You've got to start from the back of the book, and the last page of that book is actually the first page, and then you make your way all the way to the front of the book. So everything is sort of backwards. So we have Aleph, we've got Bet. This letter here, it will appear in 2 different forms. You'll see a dot that can appear in it. If there's no dot, you'd pronounce it Vet, and then Bet if it has a dot. And don't worry, everything I'm sharing now, I'm just giving a very brief, quick overview. We're going to go into much more depth, and I'll be repeating things many times over. And so when it's done, you're going to get it. And if you didn't get it, you simply need to rewind, put the video back a little bit, and listen to the segment again that you need to refresh on. All right, okay, so next letter is Gimmel. That's got the G sound. Dalet. Dalet has the D sound. Hey has the H sound. Vav has the V sound. Zain has the Z sound, as in zebra. Okay, this one here is a tough one for English speakers that weren't raised in like Hebrew or Jewish cultural contexts. It is chet. And so it's a gentle clearing of the throat. It's pronounced from the back of the throat. You could try that. Chet, chet. Tet is the next one. Yod is the next one. And I mentioned that the letters all are numbered. There's no numbering system in Hebrew like we have. We use Arabic numbers in English, but in Hebrew, there are no numbers. And so the letters are numbers. The letters represent numbers. So Aleph at the beginning here is 1. It can also mean 1,000. And the Yod is 10. So when you open a Hebrew Bible, you're not going to see numbers like 1 and 2. There are some Hebrew Bibles that have Hebrew text with English numbering, but many do not. And so you just need to become accustomed to what the value is represented in each consonant. And it takes a little bit of practice, but you certainly will get the hang of it in time. All right, next letter is, this is another one that can appear with or without a dot. That little dot we call a dagesh, and it's usually black and not green, but just for the sake of simplicity here, it is kaf, kaf, with the dot, with the dagesh. Without the dagesh, it is chaf. So very similar sound to the het that we just covered here. It's guttural from the back of the throat. Chaf. Next one is lamed, L sound. Mem, as in mom. Nun, but not none, but nun. Nun. Joshua ben Nun. So Joshua, who took over Moses' position, he was the son of a man named Nun. And so his name would be spelt with Nun, the beginning of his name. So Samech has an S sound. We've already covered that. That's a silent letter, so it just simply takes on the vowel. Vowels will appear down beneath the consonants like this. So you start with the consonant, pronounce the vowel, go up to the next consonant, pronounce the vowel. Most of the vowels appear down below. There are some that would appear up top. We'll cover that later. So this is another letter that has a couple different forms and different ways it can be said. And so when there is a dagesh, it is pay. So P as in parlor. And without the dagesh, it is fe, as in fan, F-A-N. Next one is tsadi. It looks like this particular chart is missing a tsadi sophi. We will cover that in future lessons, but there's another form that this letter can take. And these letters have, some of them have final forms. There's 5 of these letters that when the letters appear at the end of the word, it's going to look different. So we'll certainly cover that later. Next letter is kof. It has a K sound, kof. This is a tough one. This is somewhat of a guttural, back of the throat or top of the mouth. It is pronounced in different ways, depending on what part of world Jewry you're from. So English speakers have a hard time. They would say reish, reish, but it's really either supposed to be the top of the palate, as in the Spanish way of trilling your R's, reish, like that, reish, or in the back of the throat, more like a guttural, reish. That's much harder for English speakers to go reish than to trill. A lot of people know how to trill R's. Okay, this one you'll notice these 2 letters look the same, right? So really, I'm showing you a Hebrew alphabet that doesn't have any pointings at all, and that's why I've filled in some of the dageshim, the dageshes. But these letters here, this is a sheen, and that has an SH sound, such as in, he kicked me in the shin, so shh, or when you're shushing someone because you want them to be quiet, that's the sound that makes. And the next letter looks exactly the same, but you'll find the dagesh is, it's not really a dagesh, the dot, there's a dot on the upper left-hand side instead of the upper right. And that is seen, and it has an S sound, as in the word sound, or see. So the final letter of the alphabet is tav, and there are a couple ways this is pronounced. There's different classifications of Jewry, world Jewry. And the 2 major classifications are Sephardic Jews, which originate from Spain, and then Ashkenazic Jews. Sephard is the Hebrew word for Spain, and Ashkenaz is the Hebrew word for Germany. So those Jews that were based in the part of Europe that were closer to Germany, and then the others to Spain. And so Ashkenazic Jews have a slightly different way of pronouncing Hebrew. So when the tav appears at the end of a word and in some other places and it has no dagesh, they would pronounce it like an S sound, much the same as the letter sin. And then with the dagesh, the Ashkenazic Jews would pronounce it tav. I will not be teaching Hebrew from the Ashkenazic school in terms of pronunciation, because that's not what I was trained in. I was trained more in the Sephardic. And so we're going to call this tav instead of sav. And it'll be tav, it'll be pronounced T with or without the dagesh, with or without the dot. All right. So that pretty much covers the entire Aleph Bet. Let's do it quickly. So it's Aleph, Bet, Gimmel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zain, Chet, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ein, Pei, Tzadeh, Kof, Resh, Shin, Sin, and Taf. So that's it for a quick review of the Aleph Bet, all for the new person that doesn't know a stitch or a lick of Hebrew and you're starting from the very, very beginning. And I have named this pre-module after you, Newbie Shnooby. So we will see you on the next lesson, which we're going to begin with the Aleph. Okay, little placard here. It just says lesson 1 overview. So we've covered the overview. And then it has Aleph, Bet, and Gimmel. So the lessons, I've tried to fit a reasonable amount of material in there without it being overboard, without it being too much. And so for the lesson 1, it's just going to be an overview, which we've conducted. And we're going to focus on the Aleph, get a little bit more depth and detail on that letter. And then the Gimmel, and then that will be the end of lesson 1. And then once you've got that in hand and you've learned those letters, you can go on to lesson 2. I just wanted to show you, we're inside this pre-module, and here's a list of all of the teachings. And so you'll notice this is coming soon. So obviously I'm recording this at a time where I'm just beginning to build out and record these teaching modules for the Aleph Bet. You'll notice towards the bottom, number 15, there is a link called the Aleph Bet Digital Archives. And that is super helpful. That will be the most complete educational system to train someone new in Aleph Bet. It has got music and songs and videos and professional art and you name it, it's there. So if what I'm giving you, once you've gone through that, that may be enough for many of you. For some, it may not be, and that's perfectly fine. So I've included the Aleph Bet Digital Archives as a way of reinforcing and adding to, for those that want a more thorough understanding or you want to spend more time, I would go there. That's the place to go to. And then once you've mastered it, you feel like you've got it pretty handily, then you can move on to the 16 essential drills, okay? All right, we're going to go and start with the first consonant of the Aleph Bet. So there's 22 consonants. As you see, it says consonant 1 of 22. Aleph, as I previously mentioned, is one of the 2 silent letters. So the other one being Ein. And we're just going to read this through. Aleph is one of 2 silent letters, the other one being Ein. Aleph takes on the sound of whatever vowel is located beneath it. And so you're going to see, actually I'll just widen my screen a little bit. Here's a picture of vowels that appear beneath certain consonants. So this vowel is a patah. That says ah sound. Tsere says a or a. And that is beneath the vet, second letter of the Aleph Bet. And so these silent letters, because the letter consonant itself has no sound, it will take on the sound of the vowel beneath it. So that's the only sound you'll be getting is the vowel beneath it. Okay, next screen here. And so I'm giving you 2 placards for every consonant. This one will give you a little bit more information. So here we have the Aleph again. And I've given you, this is a little tracing mechanism. It's the same thing you'll find on your downloadable student worksheets. I'll have a whole sheet of paper, all pre-lined, that will have the first 3 letters of the alphabet. Plenty of room for you to practice. And this actually it teaches you how to write these correctly. This is first stroke, number 1. The strokes are numbered. Stroke number 2 is here. Stroke number 3 is here. And that's the Aleph. Now, there are other ways of writing these. There's cursive, and there's different ways. And I realize in Israel they use cursive. They will not use handwritten block print. So that style of writing is used almost exclusively for those that are studying biblical Hebrew, that are new to it. But I want you to know from the very beginning that you may not want to invest a ton of time into it because it's not real. It's a crutch to help you get acclimated to biblical Hebrew and what these letters actually look like. And for that, it will fulfill its purpose. But if you're planning on going to Israel and you're going to write something to somebody, it's not written that way. They use cursive. All right. And I give a little example for each one of these letters. Aleph. Aleph. Realize you don't know how to read that yet. You will. Aleph is the Hebrew word for champion. So I've tried to give you one Hebrew word that begins with the same letter we're discussing. So that's the Aleph. And so the A in Aleph would be the vowel, because Aleph is silent, as I've said. Now let's move on to the next placard. Here I'm introducing you to the second letter of the alphabet, and it is bet. So notice the name of the alphabet, Aleph, Bet. It's really the names of the first 2 letters. So that was intentional. So in English, it's alphabet. In Hebrew, it is Aleph, Bet. And Ashkenazic Jews would say Aleph, base. So here we have the letter Bet. And you notice one of them has a dot. That's called a dagesh. And then one of them does not. And this is one of the letters that when you add a dagesh to it, it hardens the sound. So this is pronounced with a B as in boy. And when it is missing the dot, it is pronounced a V sound as in van. So when you see this letter, you would say ba, bet says ba, vet says v. Here I've got you a picture of a house. So a house is a bait. So bait is the Hebrew word for house. Bait begins with the second consonant in the Hebrew alphabet, begins with a bet. And in ancient times, they actually say this is a rough, crude picture of a shelter where somebody, think of maybe like a lean-to, right? Where it's open in the front and maybe open on one of the sides, but at least it's got a roof on it, a little bit of a back to it, something to lie down on. It's an ancient picture of a house. And we have the tracing mechanisms here for exactly how to form the letter bet. So you can just repeat after me. Bet says ba, vet says va, bait means house, bite. Okay, next slide. Okay, next one is the third letter of the alphabet, and it is the letter Gimmel. Try to say that, Gimmel. Gimmel is pronounced like the G as in girl. It can appear with or without the dot. The dagesh is pronounced the same in either case. You're going to find that the dagesh is a very common additive to the Hebrew language for biblical Hebrew. You'll see it all over the place. Every verse of the Hebrew Bible has a dagesh, or many of them. And they do different things to the words, to the letters. And it would be wrong to assume that if there's a dagesh, that it will always change the sound of the letters. Many times it does not. So I will inform you when it does, and we will cover that. And again, everything I'm sharing, like tonight, this is a very super brief overview, but you'll be getting line upon line instruction. I will be reminding you of things, and we will be teaching on things and applying principles and revisiting them. So you get nothing to worry about. I realize all of this is new. It's a brand new world, so you need to cut yourself some slack. take a deep breath, maybe get a coffee or hot tea, whatever you like to drink, and just sit down and really try to enjoy this. It's meant to be fun and just a fun, enjoyable new learning experience. So the Gimmel, this Gimmel has a Dagesh, and the Dagesh with the Gimmel does not change anything. So Gimmel says Ga, and without the Dagesh, Gimmel says Ga. So there's no difference. Right, get the picture of a camel here. So in Hebrew, the Hebrew word for camel is gamal, gamal, and that's very similar to gimel. Now it is a different word, but there are, like many Hebrew teachers, camel always seems to be the one that's attached to this letter. And some would even say from the ancient use and origins of the letter, you see the shape of it? You get the legs down here and you get that arching neck that they would say it looks like a camel. And there could be some truth there. The pictographic meaning could go back to the camel. I just want to draw your attention to the fact that the Hebrew word for camel uses the same consonants, slightly different though. It's a ga, gamal, instead of gi, gimel. But the letter is gimel, and it has the G sound. So that is the end of our introductory lesson for the very beginning of the alphabet. It's a little bit too early to do reading. I will need to introduce you to some of the vowels, and that will be part of the next lesson, lesson 2. I'm going to cover a couple more consonants. We'll look at some vowels, and once you have a handful of consonants down, you've memorized them, and you know some of the vowels, then you can begin putting very simple one-syllable words together and attempting to sound those out. You can always write those out as well. And so I want to put a plug in. Now would definitely be the time, if you haven't yet, you want to go on Amazon.com and right on my website here in this Yarash Hebrew Conquest module or program, there are numerous places where you can click on links to purchase products such as Hebrew stencils and flashcards. I would say flashcards are probably going to be one of your best friends when you're first starting out. I find that people that don't take the time to purchase flashcards, they really struggle with the alphabet, and they could be struggling 6 months from now because they just didn't take the time. And you don't even have to buy them. You can make your own, but you'll at least need a stencil. But you'll find that the stencils are about $10 and the flashcards are between $10 and $25. So could be about the same either way. But whether you make your own or you buy them, I would strongly encourage you to right away order some, and then while it's being shipped out, you could be reviewing some of these lessons. So, well, shalom. Hopefully this has been enjoyable, and I will meet you for lesson 2.